Welcome to the Luminous Fiber Arts Floss Tube channel. I'm Misty Purcell, and I like to help you make the world cuter one stitch at a time with my designs. And today I'm also here to talk to you about how to get things finished. Those projects that you have, maybe you have some projects lurking in a box under the bed or hanging out in your closet in a box or a drawer somewhere. Does that sound familiar? Maybe you feel guilty about the number of projects that you have piling up that are all stitched and they're not having their moment of glory in the sun on display in your house. And I can relate because I have that pile too. It's in my closet. There's stuff hanging up. There's stuff in drawers. And yet, I also finish tons of models every year for my designs. I have other stuff I have to do. I have another job, and I still manage to get all that done. And so what is my secret to getting things done? The secret is to have a system. And so what I want to share with you today are 3 tips that work for me to get projects finished that I'm not sure how I want to finish, and that I hope will help you get those projects that you have hanging out finished and on display so that you can enjoy them. So let's get started. Step 1 is to have a deadline. Necessity is the mother of invention, and deadline pressure will help you get it done, get creative. That pressure is useful. And so as a designer, I often have, they're self-imposed deadlines, I guess, theoretically, but I have deadlines all year. And that really helps me because I know, like, well, this is coming and I have to get this done, so I'd better deal with it, right? Now, you may not have that pressure, and so you might have to create it for yourself. I would suggest that you pick one project. Even though you have a pile of projects, you need to just, we're all about narrowing our focus for this. So you pick one project that you want to finish and you give it a deadline. So if it's something seasonal, maybe you want to try to get it finished like a month before that season. So if it were a Christmas design, maybe you would want to start working on it in November and have it done by December 1st or something like that. If it's non-seasonal, you can just pick, right? But I would suggest that you pick a deadline, and if you need some accountability, tell a friend or a family member, ask them to check up on you to see how you're going. Put it out there on social media, let your friends know, hey, I'm gonna do this finish and it's gonna be done by this date. Please check in on me, I need that. If you're someone who would benefit from that, or just try it sometime. I mean, I'm not saying pressure is always super fun, but it does help actually. And sometimes you just need a little bit of a push to get going and then you're good. And that's what I find to be true for me. So step 1 is to pick one project and then set a deadline. I think I wouldn't go more than a month. Giving yourself a couple of weeks, I think, is good. 2 to 3 weeks at most. If you give yourself too far of a deadline, it's probably like you don't have a deadline at all. So that's step 1, deadline. Step 2 is to get your stitched piece and your finishing supplies out where you can see them. And this is key for me. So it's really important, I think, that you try this. Out of sight, out of mind. You need it where you can see it, and that it's in the back of your mind. If it's in a drawer, you aren't thinking about how to finish it. You need it to be somewhere where you can see it regularly, and then your brain will be working in the background thinking about it. So pull out the project, pull out any supplies that you think you might use, any fabric that you think could coordinate with it, any trims that you think would work, bells, pom-poms, felted pom-poms, anything, templates, get it all out, lay it out with your piece. If you see anything right away that you think is not working, go ahead and take that away. Anything that you think could work, just leave there. So I like to grab a piece of white foam core board to put my stitched piece on and any other accessories that are going to go with it. And I have limited space available, so this works well for me because I can move things around. So I put it on the board, and if the board is in my way, I can move it somewhere else while I need to work in that space, and I can move it back. I can move it to wherever I am in the house. Again, the key is to be able to see this regularly. You need to put the board with all the accessories somewhere that you're going to be walking by it and looking at it often, just so that it stays in your mind. You don't have to decide anything, you just need to be looking at it from time to time each day. So let's see. I'm going to show you some of the things that I grabbed as I was thinking about how I might finish this, just so you get a sense for what my process is. So I would grab, you can see here, I grabbed 3 cuts of quilting cotton. Now I know that this is going to be an ornament, and I know that I want to make it a flat finish. So that helps me, you know, it's simplifying things. I don't have to worry about a pillow finish, so I know it's going to be flat, it's going to be an ornament. So that means I may use some fabric to mount the piece on, or on the back. It means that I'm going to want a hanger, and I'm a big fan of this trim here, this baker's twine. Let's see, I've got some more fabric. I also have this piece here that I like. Then I grabbed some pom-pom trim because sometimes I like to use pom-pom trim on my ornaments. I grabbed some pre-made by me cording that I thought might work. And another bit of cording. This is silver and red rather than white and red. And I grabbed a couple of bows that I'd already made just in case. These I think are too big considering how small this is. I think they're too big, but it gives me a sense for would I even want a bow. If I think I might, then I can make it with a smaller ribbon. I really like to make tag ornaments, so I grabbed eyelets so that I could see what different colored eyelets might look like. So I've got a red one, I've got a green, and then I thought I would also try this kind of antique color. I've got a snowflake that could go and be cute. Also got some bells. I like this bell here, but I think it might be a little too dark. And then I've got some tiny jingle bells also, which the gold looks really pretty. And then I grabbed some other ribbon that I thought would be pretty with this. Okay, so the first step is just to get things out that you think could work. Anything that you see right away is not working, you get rid of it. And then you can just sit with it and come back to it as you're walking by. If you notice anything that's looking particularly good or particularly bad, you can save or take away things and give yourself, I mean, honestly, sometimes I give myself 1 to 2 weeks just to mull. It just depends, but eventually the deadline pressure needs to happen so that you commit. Okay, so I just want to talk about, I guess, what I ended up doing with this also, because I want to help you, but I also want to talk about what you would do if this were a pillow finish. So I knew that I wanted to make this an ornament, and I was thinking of a tag finish, but I also was thinking maybe I could do a round finish. Wouldn't that be cute? Or some kind of oval finish. That's a little too small, maybe this one. So this is another thing you can do to kind of figure out what would you like. And these templates are by Fiskars. I got them years ago when I was actually like maybe a teenager or something, so they're pretty old. I don't know if Fiskars still makes these, and there's several others. There's a square one and some other shapes, but the circle and the oval are the 2 templates that I use most. You can see them here. If you can't find them new, you might be able to find them on like eBay or Etsy. Look for them at yard sales. I do find these really helpful and use them a lot. So anyway, another tool is to put some templates down and see what you like. And if this were a pillow instead of an ornament, then what I would do is if I knew I just wanted the stitching to be on the front, then I don't really need to worry too much. I just need to decide on a fabric to go on the back and if I was going to do any trim around it. But if I'm going to add anything else, like if I'm going to add trim to the front, or I'm going to also include fabric on the front, then I need to do some thinking and playing around. So what I do for a pillow finish, if I were trying to decide about adding trim to the front, you know, I'd probably lay it out and see where did I think it should go, which that actually could be really cute if you did that with some fabric next to it, possibly. Maybe you'd need a different ribbon. But anyway, this is just how I would think about it. Like how far should this be away from the stitching? And then how much more do I want to see? That actually could be a really cute pillow if you had ribbon here and then you did ribbon there. Maybe you could even leave a bit of the fabric like this. Well, we're just getting ideas. So what you could do, in this case, you don't have to cut anything, is you just kind of roll out your ribbon like that. It's not perfect, right? But it gives you an idea. So you're trying to cover up the part that you don't want to see because it'll be sewn in. So you use printer paper, white printer paper, and then you can kind of figure out, it's not perfect, but I'm not trying to get it perfect right now. You're just trying to figure out spacing. How much do you want to see? So then if you liked that, which I actually don't think that's looking that great, it's too even. I think like the sections maybe, I don't know, something about it feels off, but you can play around. So you could, this is why I love using paper actually, because you can decide like, does this proportion look good? Is this better? Is that better? If I move the ribbon, definitely moving the ribbon helped. So then maybe, you know, maybe you'd want something like this where you've got a big center section and then you've got two smaller sections, and that could be a cute pillow, real cute pillow. Kind of reminds me a little bit of ticking, right? So that's how I would do it. Then you measure it and then you could add your seam allowance afterwards. But you're just trying to decide like, what do you want to see? You know, what proportion looks good, and then make note of where the position is, like write it down. So you'd measure like, oh, this is maybe an inch out from here on each side, and then you've got maybe another inch, and then you add your seam allowance to it. So that's how I would handle a pillow if I were putting ribbon or fabric. You know, with fabric it'd be the same thing. Like if I just wanted fabric on one side, then I'm trying to figure out, you know, what proportion of stitching to fabric do I want to see. And generally, I think as a rule of thumb, you do not want them to be equal. I think it looks, personally, I think it looks more balanced if either the fabric area is much bigger and the stitching is a small portion, or the stitching is the main thing and the fabric is just a portion of it. And you'd have to play around with like, what do you like? But I tend to think that it's too much. There's too much competition when they're the same size. You don't know what to look at. So if you can help the eye by making this smaller, or possibly making that much bigger and this smaller, you'd have to have a lot more fabric here. But anyway, that's what I would generally tend to think. So that's something to think about with pillows. So that's an idea for how to handle pillows if you want to do a pillow finish and you're not sure how much of the fabric you want to show, or how much trim you want to show, or if you're combining trim and fabric on the front. That's how you can make a decision about that without having to commit to anything. You don't have to cut anything to decide. You can just play around and see what happens. Okay, so this just really is a great way to test things out and to play and see what you think looks good. Now, you do not have to spend hours thinking about this. This is not brain surgery. Try to make it as fun and playful as you can for your own sake, right? And just let it be like you're experimenting and seeing what you think looks good. Okay. So now we're going to move on to step 3. So if you're going to finish your piece as a pillow, you can assume that your first step is to trim excess fabric away from the stitched piece. And I generally leave a 3/4 to 1/2 inch margin around the outside of the pillow. So if I were just doing stitching only on the front, then my only step right now is, I'm going to measure this, and I'm going to trim on all sides, whatever the measurement is. So in this case, if I were just doing stitching and no other fabric or anything on the front, that's what I do. Or if I had decided that I wanted ribbon and other stuff on the front, then I would do the measurements for that and trim that all up. Okay. And then if you're going to do a flat ornament, step 1 could be to measure the piece and then decide, how much margin do you want to see? And then you can figure out your template. So obviously, if you just decide to use like a pre-made template, then all you need to do is trace this onto your mat board and cut it out. But if you want to make your own template, which is what I opted to do, then you want to figure out how much do you want to see. And I tend to like to see about 1/4 inch on the sides and the bottom if I'm doing this is going to be a flat tag, I decided. So I drew some templates here and I wrote down my measurements. And then to check how I thought that would look, I just place the stitching over, and you can actually see this, or you could hold it up to a window, but you can see, like, does that look good? Am I happy with that? Do I need to make it bigger or smaller? I did 2 different versions of the tag. I think either one would have been real cute. And I opted in this case to go with the rounded one, but you could do whatever you wanted. So step 1 then would be deciding on a template, and then, doing the measurements if you're going to make your own template, and then cutting out your template. And then that's step 1. So after you do step 1 of your third step 1 of your finishing, I guess I would say, then you decide what is the next step. And then you decide, do you want to do that right now? Or do you want to save it for the next day? And it's really just important that you set small goals, that you only identify or worry about the next step, and that you're not thinking about, oh my gosh, I have to do these 50 things in order to finish this, because that's overwhelming and that's not how you get things done. Okay, trust me, I know. I've been there many a time. The secret is always just deciding what is the next thing. And so, for this ornament, I guess I would probably trim this or put batting on my template. That would be my next step. Okay. And so, like, if I'm feeling pretty good, I'll go ahead and do that. And if I feel like I can't do any more today, then I save it for tomorrow. Okay. If it were a pillow, maybe the next step would be to put on some interfacing or to cut out the backing fabric. And you just decide, do I have the energy to do this right now? Or do I need to wait until tomorrow? And that's how you get through it. It's just bit by bit. Plan to take that step when you have the most energy. So for many of us, most of us maybe, finishing feels hard, right? And so you don't want to save that for the time when you have the least energy to do that, because then you're not going to be able to really do it. You want to have as much as possible, some energy, some clear thinking. For me, I'm a morning person, so mornings tend to be better for me for finishing. Doesn't mean that's the only time I ever do it, but that's my preferred time. And I sometimes dread it, honestly. And I just say, well, I just have to do this one step, and then we'll see how I feel, okay? So that's the key, is to figure out your step that you need to take. What's your next step? And then commit to doing that. And you don't have to commit to doing anything else at that time. You're just doing that. And then you can see how you feel, if you want to keep going or if you want to stop for that day. Usually I'm like, oh, that actually wasn't so bad. Maybe I'll keep going. And it's great, because then you get farther than you thought you would, but you also have your own permission to stop if you need to. So just a reminder, our 3 steps to getting unfinished projects completed are: set a deadline and only pick one project at a time to worry about, okay? One step at a time. Then get your project out and any finishing supplies that you might like to use with it, preferably on something flat that you can move around if you need to, and put it where you can see it regularly. And then third is to decide what your first step is after you've kind of chosen some of your things that you want to use on it, and take that first step at a time when you have energy, if you can. I know life is tricky, but if you can pick a time when you have more energy, that's the best. So I guess at the end, I would just like to offer some encouragement. And I know that for me, finishing is challenging. I know that it's not why many of us get into cross stitch so that we can finish stuff. We get into cross stitch because we want to stitch. And of course we like how something looks finished, so we want that, but we don't necessarily enjoy the process of getting there. And we always worry, or maybe not always, I can't speak for everyone, we often worry about ruining something or not finishing it to some standard that we think it deserves for all the time and effort that we've put into it. And I totally get that. I've felt all of those things too. And all I can say is, to some extent, it's just pushing through how you're feeling and saying, okay, this is how I feel, but I'm going to do this anyway. And there's things that you can do. Well, one thing that you can do is you can make a test piece. Once you decide how you think you want to finish it, you can just grab some unstitched fabric that's laying around, that's a small scrap that you didn't know what to do with, and use it to do your ornament. See how it looks. Or use it to do your pillow. You're not sure if you know how to finish this weird shaped pillow, and so you just use some scrap fabric and see how it goes so that you can learn from it. I've done that before. I did Christmas stockings a few years ago for my pattern Noël Rouge. I wasn't sure if I knew how to do a stocking. I had to do at least 2 test pieces before I dared do it on my stitched fabric. It was really helpful. I learned a lot and I wasn't as stressed. So you can always just test it on something that haven't even stitched it at all. Or again, if you're worried about it and you have something similar that you aren't as invested in, you can try the finish on that first. Remember, this is not brain surgery. It's okay if it doesn't turn out exactly as you envision. Many things that I start working on, as I work on them, I change my mind about them. Sometimes they don't turn out how I thought they would. Sometimes they turn out way better than I imagined. So anything can happen, but it can't happen if you don't try. And so that's a really important thing, I think, for us to talk about, is kind of the psychological aspect of this, that we have so much anxiety. I know I do, about ruining things. And the truth is that you aren't going to get better at finishing if you don't finish stuff. I mean, I tell this to Spanish students all the time. I'm a Spanish professor, and kids come to class and they want to get better at Spanish, but they don't want to actually have to speak Spanish to get better at Spanish. And there's no other way. You can't wait to get comfortable at something in order to improve at it or to get comfortable. Like, you actually have to do the thing, and then the confidence comes later. So you just have to do a lot of finishing and let it be whatever it is. It won't all be good. You might have to do a lot of bad finishing. I've done bad finishing. Later on, I came back to some things and changed them. And some things I left, and I was like, well, that's fine. So what matters most is trying to enjoy the process as much as you can and take some pressure off, except for the deadline pressure. And let it be okay that it's not perfect or not exactly what you imagined. And try to enjoy it anyway. Try to enjoy the stitching that you did anyway, and having it on display, and that it represents where you are at that time. If you see other people, like me or anyone else, Vonna, Helen, if you see people doing finishes that you really like, they worked hard at those. Like, it's lots of work to get to that point, and you didn't see that process, and you yourself have to go through that process. But there's all these amazing tutorials out there to help you, so that you can get there faster to where you want to be with your finishing. So I hope that you take that as encouragement. I hope this is helpful for you. It's really, truly just about breaking things down into simpler steps to reduce overwhelm. and keeping it in your top of mind by having it out where you can see it. And that's key. So whenever I have a design that I need to get done, I pull it out so that I can start thinking. It's in the back of my mind, but I tend to not really know how I'm going to finish something until I'm working on it. And so, like I said, as I work on it, sometimes I change my mind. So that's just really helped me. And that's a process I've developed over the years. I hope it helps you out too. And hopefully you get some more of your beautiful stitching on display where you can enjoy it. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I hope that you will like it and subscribe to my channel. You can sign up for my newsletter to find out more about what I'm doing when I have new releases, and I share tips like about finishing, behind the scenes information. My newsletter subscribers are the first to get notifications of new designs and kits and things like that. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook as Luminous Fiber Arts. You can also follow me on Pinterest. Hope that you have a great day and happy finishing.